So thanks for coming. We know it's obviously the slot before catching your flight or trying to squeeze in lunch. And so it's great to see you here. We want to talk a little bit about how to deal with your, restaurant, food, beverage facilities and hotels and your spas. Is that something that typically should be done by one and the same provider, or is it better to work with specialists that can make you, a unique destination spa or destination restaurant, so you get external business maybe that you wouldn't have got if that wasn't there as a facility? And we're very lucky to have some, great specialists here today. I would suggest everybody briefly introduces themselves so you're familiar with the panel. As a sort of housekeeping matter, we welcome questions. We don't just want to talk at you. Feel free to, put up your hand and ask questions. That's what you've come here for, to, get that information. So to kick off, I'm just going to ask Susan to start by telling you briefly about herself and her company and Paul and so on, and then we'll start the debate.
Oh, very quickly. I think a lot of you know me already. I'm CEO and founder of Spa, which is considered, I think, one of the foremost spa companies in the world. We're also one of the few, we do a shopping list of services now. We're much more flexible in our business model, but we design spas, manage spas, have postgraduate training. We work in 60 countries. We manufacture our own product in England in a very green factory in Somerset. And we train about 3,000 therapists a year in our postgraduate treatments. And we have some wonderful clients where we have spas. Spa Life is our wellness model, which is at Paul's Hotel in London at Corinthia, and also at Glen Eagles in Scotland and Resorts World Sentosa in Singapore. So I won't waffle on. You can ask me whatever you want to ask me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Pisani. I head development for Corinthia, which is a luxury brand with a relatively small collection of hotels, but it's growing in the places we want it to grow. Because it's a mixed portfolio, we do have instances where we manage our own F&B and manage our own spas, but we also have other instances such as London. As Sue mentioned, we have an spa, and we also have a celebrity chef in one of our restaurants. My specialty is not actually food and beverage, but certainly from the various experiences that we've had, I think we can have a very interesting discussion in terms of the various options available to hotels around the world.
Hi, good morning. My name is John Jansen. I'm the director of the One Group. The One Group is a high-end hospitality company with origins in the UK, mainly operating at the moment in the US. New York, Las Vegas, Miami, LA. We have two divisions to what we do. We own and operate our own restaurants. Principally, our main brand is STK, one of the most talked about restaurant brands in the States at the moment. And on the other side of our business, we have what we call One Experience, where we partner with an asset owner, typically a hotel or a casino, and we create a turnkey, bespoke F&B program from top to bottom for that building. It may involve one of our brands, STK or Asalina. It may involve creating a new brand that will become a destination for that building in its own right. And our vision is to turn the F&B and the hospitality program away from just being an amenity to the hotel, but becoming a destination and something on the social calendar of the wider market that's not just the hotel guest. At the moment, we're operating that project in the Gansevoort in Park Avenue in New York, in the Perry in Miami, with the Anchor restaurant in the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, and we've just opened our flagship hotel in London with Melia under their Me umbrella.
Thank you very much. Briefly about myself, I'm Babette Merzhauser-Wood from Dentons. We are a global law firm with 79 offices in 52 countries, and we're particularly specialist in hospitality, so we probably have the largest hotel lawyers team that you could find in any law firm. And so we are very interested in all aspects of hospitality, including, how the spa and the restaurant features are integrated. And of course, as lawyers, we view it more as sort of what type of legal agreement. Is it a franchise? Is it a leasee just subletting the premises? Or do you get a third-party operator to manage it? And so I was just sort of going to kick off with a question I know about, which is, what's the best structure? What structure have people on the panel and in the audience seen work for them? As an owner, clearly you can go it alone. You can own and operate, and you can have your own restaurant and your own spa and hire staff and just get on with it. Or you can engage a specialist partner, such as the One Group or SPA, to do what they do best for you, which is run the spa for you, design the F&B concept, and just want to throw open for debate. I know Paul has done different things, horses for courses. What's the best way to go? I mean, Paul, maybe you start off as owner. How do you decide that?
Well, I think the decision starts, certainly for us, very early in a development process. We are in the business, certainly at the luxury level, of providing experiences. It's not just about providing therapies in a spa or breakfast in a restaurant. And therefore, because it is about experiences, the decision on whether to use a specialist or otherwise, at the very beginning is driven by brand alignment. Can the specialist add value to what we are providing in terms of an experience? For many hotels, historically, and possibly still the case today, an outlet such as a spa tends to be a non-profit making department. You need it there because you attract a different type of client or additional clients. But in many cases, most hotels don't make too much money or very little. And therefore, for us, it really is a case-by-case decision. In some destinations, such as my home country, Malta, where the predominant guest source is tour operators and families, etc. In some cases, it's not cost-effective to employ the services of a specialist. However, in the case of London, for example, where we sought to position the hotel at the very, very topmost level of the market, we searched and we looked to see what would work best. And certainly, Espa, a case in point, was a brand we felt had very similar values, very similar customer base, and we felt it opportune to share knowledge and experiences to ensure that the overall experience is enhanced. In fact, in London, for example, we have the largest hotel spa in the city with 3,500 square meters. The investment in the spa alone was over £10 million, and therefore it was a very important consideration. A, do we bring someone in or not? And B, if we do bring someone in, who do we bring in? And in our case, we have a situation which is more or less a light management agreement type relationship. But it really has been, the focus has not just been about cost or about return on investment, but really about guest experience enhancement. So that's really the way we would approach it. It really is driven by case analysis, overall expectation, and certainly, can the specialist add value to what we do? Because certainly as hotel operators who've been in the business for 50 years, we can run restaurants and we can run spas, and we do that in many situations. However, in competitive landscapes such as London, it really is about having something special as an added selling point, and certainly as an added experience source. So that is the way we would typically approach it.
Yeah. I'll probably ask Sue to comment on what you said regarding the spa as a non-profit making department. We had a chat on Sunday night. I know you have some views on that, which...
Yes, I mean, it's such a big subject, and it's one that's really coming to the fore since the economic crisis. So I think if we talk about third-party management agreements, there are very few spa operators who will completely take the spa away from you. And I think it really depends what your agenda is. There's a lot of mixed-use developments at the moment, obviously, where they just really want to hive off the spa because the developers have a different approach maybe than a hotel or a developer who's used to building luxury hotels. And I think it's very different in luxury top end of the market than it is in the middle category. My experience is there are very, very few companies globally who will either franchise or lease space because you get a them and us scenario. And I've seen this several times around the world. So historically, if anything, that gap is closing even more. So from a guest perspective, if you have a spa that is completely leased off, the staff are employed separately, the brand standards often are different, and with all due respect to hoteliers, they really don't care. So if it's over there, it's not even one of their departments, it's another department, let them get on with it. So you don't have any economies of scale either. So I think you can almost break the market down. We still have, and we discuss this globally all the time, we still have clients who want trophy spas that will never make money. And when I say make money, they'll wash their face. But if you look at the return on investment on something like £10 million or £15 million or whatever it is, it's going to be very difficult to get a true return on investment. And by true, I mean including depreciation and everything else. I mean, if you look at spa profit and loss projections, they really don't include, a lot of them don't include energy, a lot of them don't include depreciation, all sorts of things. So and we don't have a benchmark in the world for the industry. So I do think spas can make money. It depends how you look at it, and it depends on the P&L. So I think any of you considering it, there are some operators out there that will bullshit you. So you need to be very careful about your figures, and you need to be very careful who's giving you the figures. And I would make sure that you get those figures cross-checked with a very good consultant. When it comes to a spa like Paul's, and we love working with Corinthia because it is a shared brand standard position. We work daily. I have a team dedicated to that spa, and we work daily with housekeeping, engineering, sales and marketing, F&B, and the interface and the integration is really important. So for me, every spa contract that we do is about building relationships. With a spa of that caliber and size, I think an interesting stat for you to look at is on the weekends, we get a 35 to 40% capture rate from the hotel, which is huge, and it's huge for the industry. Not all of those are having treatments. Corinthia London has an exceptional thermal floor, and it has exceptional facilities. And I was just saying to Paul that one of the issues we have is because of that high capture rate from the hotel, they'll be down there for 2 or 3 hours using the facilities, and actually there's no revenue to the spa. So that's another, if you look at the data and how you analyze the data, it's really interesting. Sorry, Babette, I'm rambling a bit, but I think it'll yeah, and I think people will ask questions because of it. In our model, we also have made it very flexible because what we're finding is, so if we come away from what I call the trophy spa, which are the big ones that need specialists to drive them, the other problem we've got in the industry, which you probably know about, is we have a very low resource of senior management who understand marketing, who understand finance. It's very difficult to get those people. So I would suggest that in a bigger spa, you really do need that third-party expertise. What we're finding now is because of the global economic climate, which obviously is now improving, fingers crossed, but during those couple of years where it really plummeted, a lot of hotels couldn't afford a full management agreement. And so we started to create a shopping list to help them in areas that they were weak. Obviously, because we've got products, treatments, and training anyway, which is, you all need that within a spa. But what we find is some individual hotels, some groups are very weak on training, they're very weak on marketing, they don't understand yield, they don't understand KPIs. If you ask a spa director about KPIs, you'll find 80% of them don't know what a KPI is. So you're starting at quite a low base. So what we've done is we've actually put a formula together that's much more flexible. And we often find that, for instance, when we open Corinthia London, you've got a hotel opening, so they have to focus on their hotel. They have to focus on getting their marketing right, their SOPs right, their KPIs right. They don't want to know about the spa. So we take that responsibility completely away from them for the first couple of years, which I think is really important. So they get the hotel brand standards established, they get marketing standards established, and then they start focusing on the spa. So if we take hold of it and we control it and we drive it for 2 years, or sometimes more, then we can start to change and flex that agreement a little bit later as they become more knowledgeable, and maybe they don't need the same degree of input. But whatever you do, what I would say is any kind of management, audit, it's a very labor-intensive business compared to hotels. So it's a needy business, it's emotionally needy because you're dealing with people and you're dealing with people's bodies and minds and psychology as well. So spas are a completely different business model to hotels, and I think any of you getting into that business don't underestimate the amount of knowledge, expertise, and so on that you need.
That's very interesting.
Just
Thank
want
you
to
very much.
add
You wanna
something,
just comment
you know,
on
on the
pass
whole
to John?
experience factor. Sue's absolutely right. It's all about integration and alignment. What we have done, in fact, is, for example, rather than just limiting the spa experience to the spa, we've, for example, taken a decision since the very beginning to use all the spa products as our guest supplies in the bathrooms, and therefore, at the same time moving that experience to the hotel room, and therefore people who actually never even visit the spa still have access to the same products. Similarly, we have, for example, a Harrods in our hotel in London, and the same Harrods products which are available in the Harrods shop are what we use in our minibars. Again, transferring that same experience back to the room. It's really about a holistic experience, certainly at the luxury level. So just wanted to add that.
That's very interesting, an integrated approach to
Yes.
partnering with a specialist operator. Now, how does the whole thing look on the F&B side? Is the restaurant also a non-profit making department?
I hope not.
Or, what would you say?
Well, I can't talk to you about spas, apart from the fact I burnt my fingers in the steam room last night, mucking around with the hot stones. I can talk, I know, the steam comes out the stones. I didn't realise. I've been talking to you about hospitality. I think the question was about management contract, originally, and third party. We think it's moving. We think the world's changing. The majority of what we do now is a souped-up management contract. It's got elements of management contract in it. It's got elements of lease in it. And by doing that, we become a joint venture partner to the hotel. A lot of what Susan was just talking about integration, about, in our view, a hotel can only really have one boss, only one governor. Ship can only have one captain. So what we try and do is integrate ourselves from the very, very, very beginning. And working as a JV partner makes that a lot easier. Pure management contract, different vested interests. Pure lease, different vested interests. But to ensure that the hotel and the bricks and mortar and the customer experience of the guest in the room isn't compromised, going into a JV partner really is a solution for that. And again, each one is on a case-by-case basis, but we do try and by that we obviously have to invest as well. Is a restaurant profitable? Yes, there's no question. We think that, again, the world's changed from the restaurant facilities or hospitality or F&B, whatever phrase one wants to give it, or terminology, has moved from purely being an amenity within the hotel to being something that becomes more of a destination. There's psychology behind that, there's intuition behind that. Anyone that was here yesterday, there's no coincidence that Ian Schrager's been fated as reinventing the boutique hotel. He ran nightclubs. He started out show business and running nightclubs and has brought that into the hotel market. And we very much buy into that philosophy. We operate a flagship, again, very, very close to the Corinthia in London. And it's really a really good case study for what we do and what we do well under our One Experience banner. So we're joint venture partners with Me, which is part of the Melia Hotel Group. It's their upscale urban city centre product. And we have 5 divisions within that building. We have our own brand, STK, which is a destination steakhouse. But more importantly, it's not located in the heart of the hotel. It's on the perimeter of the hotel. So guests can enter it not knowing they're necessarily entering a hotel. I once said to someone in the restaurant, next time you're here, you must stay here. He said, why would I stay in a restaurant? So well, you've got 157 bedrooms upstairs. We have an Italian restaurant there as well, again with its own street entrance. We have a rooftop bar with views over London that has its own identity that we've created in tandem with the hotel owner and created an IP that will then get used again, but it's become its own branded destination. We run the banqueting and events program, which is done from the start point of a contemporary restaurateur and a branded experience as opposed to a traditional just pure day delegate rate. And then very similar to what Paul said, the in-room dining menu, you can have the best of STK, the best of Assolina, our Italian restaurant, the best of Radio, our rooftop bar, which is more club sandwich and burger led. And then the mini bar as well, which we're trying to create an experience that's over and above the traditional kettle chips, Pringles and Coca-Cola. The best example of is it profitable, which yes it is, and it can be if it's managed correctly with the right partners. In the case study that I'm just describing loosely, the hotel has 157 guest bedrooms. So with the assumption it was 100% full and every other room had 1 or 2 people in it, on Saturday night just gone, there would have been 250 people sleeping in the hotel, approximately. We brought through the hotel over and above that about another 1,800 people using the bricks and mortar, and they weren't sleeping there. The core business of the hotel is to sell rooms and an ADR and a RevPAR, of course. 1,800 people coming through that building for hospitality and F&B over and above the people sleeping there. That's a big business. Now, to run that, we do something very similar to what you've just described. We have an F&B director that sits in the hotel. He meets with the hotel general manager every single morning. He briefs his team after that every single morning. Our director of operations meets the hotel general manager 3 times a week. And by doing so, we become a deep, deep-rooted JV partner. So it's more than a management contract. And we think that for the success of the hotel looking to become a destination over and above people sleeping in the building, it has to go that way.
Very interesting. So there's quite a lot of similarity I can see between the spa angle and the F&B angle. And that certainly from what I'm hearing for a luxury hotel, it seems to be well worth thinking about partnering with specialist spa and F&B companies to create added value, which was, is going to help with your bottom line. What I was asking myself listening is, how about the mid-tier market? Maybe Paul's the best person because I know you got.
Well, we don't really have any mid-tier hotels anymore, but what I've seen as a trend is more, third-party outsourcing. I've seen examples even here in Germany where in some cases the only employee of the hotel directly is the general manager, with housekeeping being outsourced, food and beverage being outsourced, accounting being outsourced, procurement being outsourced. Of course, when you do that, it really, in my opinion, tends to be probably easier to quantify in terms of cost and certainly easier to control in terms of cost because you're talking about defined numbers. But then does it fit together and integrate together as an experience? Possibly not, but maybe at the mid-tier level the experience is less important and profitability is more of the consideration. But it's not a route that we have taken so far. And what I've seen certainly at the luxury level, luxury operators tend to be very precious about what they deliver to their customer. And if they can maintain as much control of that as possible, then they will seek to do that, even perhaps at the expense of profitability margins. But certainly at the mid-scale level, perhaps it's a different story. And I think we had an earlier discussion where you mentioned that your opportunity really is at that space more than at the luxury space.
Yeah, we clearly know our spots in the market, and it works for us. And we don't really operate in what we call the luxury market. How do we define what we do? We would say it's upscale 4-star, bottom end of 5-star. Use the buzzwords urban, contemporary, boutique, all of those that useful portfolio of words that if you put them all in a sentence, it sounds really good. The good thing about that is that a 5-star customer is happy to trade down to a premium upscale 4-star and feel very, very comfortable. And a 3 to 4-star customer who is used to that more mid-scale, I wouldn't say 4 stars mid-scale, that 3 to 4-star customer, if you're going 4-star deluxe, actually feels like they've been upgraded and they've got some great added value there as well. So it's about, for us, encouraging it to be a destination. I mean, a really good example, you take the Standard Hotel in New York. I don't know if anyone knows where it is, in Meatpacking District. The rooms are okay, they're not massive, they've got nice views of the Hudson. It's doing $80 million a year. 50% of that's coming from hospitality and F&B. Now, the reason that one visits that isn't necessarily, you don't choose that hotel just because it's got a small bedroom that's quite expensive. You choose that hotel because you can enjoy all the other elements of that experience that go with it. And I guess it's different to a spa. You go to a spa, you sort of lock yourself in and you want to be on your own and you want that solitude. Whereas if you go to a restaurant and a bar, you want to be part of the scene. And it's adding other dimensions to why the guest is choosing that building to sleep in, whether it's the business traveller, or whether it's a weekend guest who may not actually necessarily be an out-of-town tourist. They might be, whether it's a British tourist coming to London, whether it's a bridge and tunnel tourist coming across the river to come to the city centre in Manhattan. It's adding another reason to visit, and creating that as a destination for the building itself. And by doing so, again, let's go back to what I said earlier, the hospitality elements, they become less of an amenity. They then turn into a business centre in their own right. And off the back of that, the profitability and the management of that P&L is incredibly important to the success of the return of that building as an overall capital investment.
That sounds like a really exciting proposition for some of the mid-scale hotels where the food can be, a bit poor. Sure.
I think a lot of what you've said is similar in our industry as well. I think what's happening with the spa industry, back to the question of can they make money, of course that they can make money, and it depends at what cost. And I think what's interesting is this overall asset value of the whole hotel. And what we're finding is that the market is definitely segregating, and I think you have to go right back to the beginning of when you look at a building and what you want a building to do. So, for instance, if you've got real estate in the middle of New York or London or Tokyo or wherever, and you feel your hotel's a business hotel and it's going to be business hotel all the time, you might just think, right, I want an amenity spa and all I want it to do is massage. And you're saying about locking away. What's very interesting is the market is also breaking down into people who want very much the personal space, but equally there's a big social element to spas now for the bigger ones. So I go back to deciding what you want at whatever level of the market on day one. So if you just want an amenity spa because you feel you've got to have a spa, then make sure that it's X number of square meters, that it doesn't have all the frills and frou-frou and all the rest of it, and that it's yielding probably just massage, that's all you're going to need, at X amount per hour, and you can look at that on a RevPAR basis. And then the next one up from there, we've still got in the cities, we've got like Corinthia, like Peninsula, hotels that are strongly leisure as well as corporate. So making those decisions in the beginning is really important. So if you've got a high FIT business, then the spa needs to deliver a completely different type of experience. And you'll get the revenue in a completely different way as, again, for the overall building. And I'm seeing more and more of our clients looking at it that way. It seems to be segmenting into two sectors. You've either got developers that are looking at a per square foot revenue and return on investment, or you've got developers looking at the whole experience. I've got clients, for instance, who are buying whole blocks of cities. I've just opened a spa in Dallas, and we're doing another one in Austin for the same owner, and he's got the whole block. He's developed the whole of downtown Dallas, hotel, restaurants, shopping, very high-end shopping. He wanted the spa to complement that whole thing. So it was, as you're saying, a lifestyle experience. And that can fit, that's actually a 4-star hotel. It's a very great hotel and the spa is absolutely divine. But he's not really, I would say he's not really putting a star rating on it. It's a boutique hotel that's a lifestyle experience. It's a whole different ballgame. So I bash on, and I know I drive everybody crazy, about this brainstorming right at the beginning of if you're building a huge building, whether it's mixed use, residential, hotel on its own, resort, whatever it is, it's that brainstorming right at the beginning to define what you want the spa to do. And if you just want it to be an amenity, that's fine, but design that right at the beginning because it can bring so much more.
One thing to add, Babette, in my opinion, we're living more and more in a specialized and in a branded world. And in many instances, most of our guests are becoming more and more sophisticated, more well-traveled, have seen a lot more of the world, and certainly have experienced a lot more of our competition. And sometimes, again, it very much is location dependent, but in many situations, if the local market is very sort of brand savvy and has brand expectations, that's another key consideration. Because the same unbranded spa may look exactly the same and have very little difference to a branded spa, but the fact that it is branded all of a sudden makes it appealing. So many of these decisions really are very specialized and very focused, and it's very difficult for us to say the solution is solution 1, solution 2, or solution 3, because invariably there's 100 solutions or more. And it really needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. And that's the way we have approached it so far, and it seems to work. And I believe this is the way it should be done. Because in the same way as nothing is uniform and things are different in different parts of the world, solutions are different in each case as well. So it really is important to understand expectation, the local environment, who your customer is, and then base decisions on those considerations.
Okay, I think John, you wanted to.
I was going to say something quite similar. I mean, there was a talk yesterday, and the word brand was used quite disparagingly, and it was said that all you ever hear these things is brand. But I think in this instance, it's actually well used and very important. Very different, slightly different to what Paul's got, because you've got your own brand and it's your own flag and it's your own asset. The hotel flag is brought to a building for the reason to sell, develop, and keep clean a room in a systematic, profitable fashion. A spa, where a spa is coming, it's considered to a degree to be a flag as well for that building. It's a branded flag and it's a reason to visit. And what we're finding though now, it's not necessarily the hotel flag that makes the decision about who comes to the building. You've got sovereign wealth, you've got high net worth individuals. These are the people that are developing the buildings. And similar to what Susan just said, if they want an S-Spa or they want an STK, they'll make damn sure they get it. Now, that's sometimes not the hotel flag's decision, and you have even more people coming to the table within that building to make that building work as a destination. What we're trying to do is create a flag for hospitality, where seamlessly that if you've got the same operator doing your breakfast, and obviously it's different experience throughout the day in the customer journey, doing your breakfast, doing your minibar, doing your room dining, doing your amenity program, doing your destination restaurant, doing your roof, doing your pool, doing your parties, you're buying into that hotel for reasons over and above your loyalty program, the fact that your company might have a business rate there. There's other reasons to use that building. But it's not necessarily the hotel flag's decision as to why. And we think, again, the world's changing with all of this other money coming to the development program, that the restaurant horizon is very exciting. It's a very sexy business to be in. The bar business and the nightclub business, you look at Vegas, there's a massive shift now between the revenues in Vegas coming from pure hotel and gambling to hospitality in a wider level. I mean, if I could have one nightclub in Vegas, I'll be happy as Larry for life. That you're done. The revenues that these guys make. So it's quite interesting how it's all changing, and to bring hospitality to the forefront of that is a big part of what we're looking to focus on as we move forward.
Can I maybe just be controversial here? And you're saying the brand thing. So, and I know I've chatted to Susan about this as well. So how does what you are selling sit alongside the big hotel companies? Now, Marriott, no doubt, have a spa product. And when they talk to an owner, they want the owner to buy the whole package. But you too, obviously, saying it would be better for the owner to have Marriott manage the rooms and to have the spa, an spa, and maybe the F&B designed by you. How do you work that out?
I think it's a case-by-case basis. I really do. I mean, I used to think, I don't necessarily think third-party operators is the right solution for big business hotels, for instance. It depends what you, again, coming back to this thing is, are you dealing with the individual leisure guest, high net worth, who's looking for a very personalized, very unique experience? That's where brands can, if you like, I think the consumer trusts certain brands. So when you say about brands and positive and negative, you've got to, I mean, we as a company, I still own the majority share of the company, I hang on to that brand for life. I mean, I drive my team mad about what we turn away, because you've got to hang on to that brand. And one of my big selling points is that if you have an spa, we help you in the first 2 years in particular. Normally, if you open a spa, it takes 2 years before anybody even decides whether it's any good or not. If you have an spa, you'll have the press in there straight away. You'll have people in the door straight away. So you speed up that whole profile very quickly. But if I don't deliver on day one, I'm dead meat. And we don't have such a thing anymore as soft openings, as you all know. Anybody who's opened a hotel, you don't get a chance anymore to do a soft opening. So if you've got a brand and you've got a high-profile brand, they're in the door straight away, so you better be ready and you better know what you're doing. So there's pluses and minuses. The other thing I think is, if you're really doing an amenity spa, which is going to be, pile them high, push them through, you don't need a third-party agreement. Then you can run that in the same way as you run the basics of everything else. I think that if you're dealing in that sophisticated consumer, and that person's very difficult to define now. Years ago, it used to be money-driven. But now if you look at the people and where the money's coming from and who's got the money, it's so different to what it was 5 years ago. But they're all looking for that very personalized individual experience. Then you need the specialists, then you need the third party, then you need the brand, because it's not easy to buy that. I think I may be wrong, and you guys can tell me, I think in the hotel industry, if you've got budget, you can buy a good GM, you can buy a good F&B manager. In the spa industry, you can't. They don't exist. We have a real resource issue out there worldwide. There's reasons for it, and we're all getting better at it. And the universities, the hospitality universities now are getting better at adding spa modules and things like that. But it's lagging behind the hotel industry. Does that help?
I just align that to hospitality with the amenity as well. You get to, if you want an amenity program, if you want an amenity hospitality program, you sort of don't need to outsource it. But with that in mind, your aspirations on your revenue and or your profit have to be limited. There comes a point to really what you can do. You're really focusing on the guest in the hotel, serving an amenity. And what's interesting is that everybody around you, your competitive space, they might not be doing the same. If I look at London and New York, the independent restaurant space on every street corner is very, very, very exciting. So if I'm a business traveller and I've got 30, 40, 50 pounds of subsistence in my pocket to spend that night, why on earth would I go and have a dish in a hotel amenity restaurant when I can walk out the door and go somewhere very, very exciting for half the price? So I think that's something that must be considered. When you look at bringing in an expert as well, I use the analogy that a hotel general manager who's got responsibility for restaurants isn't necessarily the right way to go. Now, if you we use a story, and we see it in our hotels. A hotel general manager has his guest with him for approximately 24 hours, maybe 18 hours. So that's the window of time they have to work with and nurture and put a good experience on that guest. In our world, in restaurant space, it's capped at about 3 hours. So if I've got an issue with a guest, our managers in hospitality, their instinct and their experience is to obviously make sure that guest is fulfilled, feels happy, potentially compensated, a bottle of champagne, free dessert, whatever it might be, whatever their issue is at the start point. The natural instinct of a restaurant hospitality manager is to get them happy as soon as possible, probably spend max 5 minutes on it, and get that table turned. Because that table is more revenue at 10 o'clock, half 10, 11 o'clock. When one observes a traditional hotel general manager, their natural instinct is to sit them down, get some pastries, invite them for a coffee, spend about an hour and a half, because they've got them for 24 hours, invite them for lunch on the roof the next day. It's completely opposite ends. Both want to end up with the same aim. The end goal is to make the guests feel great, encourage a repeat visit, but the skill set behind both of those come from opposite ends of the spectrum, and that comes with experience. I wouldn't say that our industry is as I'm not saying bad, but the extent of skill is what you've described, but it is a skill that comes with experience, to know that to keep the energy, and we're about, our business is about energy and vibe and atmosphere and being at a party and feeling that you're somewhere that you want to be and stay and it's electric. To do that, you need people, and you need to keep that people flow going and keep people moving. So we see that analogy, that it's a very clear way of saying, if you want something special, you need to bring someone in that really knows how to do that as a speciality. And if you want something, then don't have any aspirations for how you'll have your revenue and your profit, because the guest can jump in a cab, go 3-5 minutes round the corner, and probably have a better experience.
Paul, what do you think as an owner? You're nodding.
Well,
What do you do about your restaurant?
I agree in terms of, food and beverage is a specialized field in the same way as spas are, in the same way as, hotel keeping are. And from what we've seen, while one tries to hire an all-rounded general manager, it is not always possible. And certainly even an all-round general manager has certain areas of specialization. I do agree with you in terms of specialists do things better because that's all they focus on, whereas a hotel typically has a broader spectrum to be responsible for. But I still believe that one has to look at the situation. I'll just give you one example, where we signed a management contract last year for a hotel in Abuja, Nigeria, which is planned to be the best hotel in Africa when it opens. There are very few competitors in the city at the moment. And there's one, which is a Hilton, which is a 70s building, has about 670 rooms, an average rate of $600 plus, and a food and beverage contribution, which is equal to room revenue. And you can imagine what, in terms of real numbers, what that is when they have an average room rate and 670 rooms. And the reason for that is because it's the only destination in town today where locals can go, be seen, entertain their foreign guests or even their local guests, and make a sort of I'm it sort of statement. And with that level of food and beverage contribution, no doubt, the general manager has his hands very full. In that sort of situation, I would see two questions. A, should one hire a specialist? Because, then you take away all the headache and all the hassle and all the logistical problems. But then again, if you do hire a specialist, is it going to make any real difference to your revenue? And if it doesn't, paying a third party for that service is in effect reducing your revenue rather than enhancing it. So I think it really, we keep repeating ourselves, but I think the reality is that it is on a case-by-case basis. Certainly when we open our hotel in Abuja, with a lot less rooms, we aim to be the best in the market. The food and beverage offering will become integral to what our guests will be receiving. Will we subcontract it or outsource it? I doubt it, because it's going to be a smaller operation. And again, as I said before, we want this to be one experience rather than different pieces. But having said that, no doubt there will be other opportunities, particularly in we keep talking about London and New York, but the world's a lot bigger. And in many situations, you don't find local staff. You don't find good food and beverage managers, or certainly spa managers. And obviously there's a strong case for companies such as yourselves to come in as a JV partner or as any other type of relationship to make it happen. So, London, New York, they're special cities in their own right, but everywhere else, and certainly us as hoteliers, are looking all around the world. Africa, I believe, is a land of opportunity. Certainly, certain countries are. So again, if the local population does not deliver trained staff, that's a strong case for you guys, so long as the value can be added.
Well, I think you use the example of if I was the first hotel in a town in Nigeria, I'd do it myself.
Yep.
There's no question. You look at any sophisticated city, and I know we've cited London, New York, Berlin, Istanbul, Marrakesh, Tel Aviv, Stockholm, Amsterdam, Milan, all of these cities around mainland Europe and EMEA, Dubai. Dubai's a very good example. You build a hotel in Dubai for 100 million. As soon as you open the door, the guy next door's built one for 200 million. So you've got to have something very special to differentiate yourself. You made a point though, and I'm going to move away from Nigeria back to the world that we understand. It's that local person using the facility as well. And I think that's a really important point. I guess it, and again, I don't know, I guess it transfers into spa world as well, that particularly using that leisure local person using the building and using the facility, not necessarily at Monday to Thursday, which is key business traveller time. And that's what creates a destination. If you strip it all the way back, a developer, whether it's a high net worth, whether it's a Blackstone, whether it's a hotel company itself, has a physical asset on a piece of land in an area. They could become a landlord. Now, how do they maximize for their guest experience, realizing the rental value that they could just lease out to any other operator, whether it's retail or fashion or food or drink, whatever it might be? How do they maximize their exposure of that? And I think that's where that joint venture element comes in, because effectively that's what they do. We talk about experience. We're the three people talking about customer experience and brand and making them have a good time and come back. The people at the top they want to know what their asset return is.
Absolutely.
That's what they're interested in. So they want to be the customer when they want to be the customer, but when they're entertaining and having fun. But ultimately is what is their return on capital investment? And the key to it is how can we bring something to the table? And again, I expect it's similar on the spa side, is how can we construct something, going back to the original start point of the debate, how can we construct something that's compelling, that they have an inherent interest in the revenue, an inherent interest in the profitability, that the team responsible for the growth and sustainability and profitability of that business have everyone's interests aligned, everyone's got the same vested interest, whether both parties have got skin in the game or whatever it might be. And that's a really important part. Now, to make that, and again, I talk from our experience in hospitality, to make that a 24/7, virtually 24/7, 7-day-a-week operation, putting something compelling into the marketplace over and above the person visiting for 24, 48, 72 hours to that building, that's the opportunity.
I think that maybe brings us on to another interesting topic, because we've learned quite a lot, I think, now about how bespoke it all is. We just talk a little bit about the financial aspects now, I was going to suggest, because you've got a joint venture model. I think that's unusual. And new was the classic management model is we share the upside but not the downside, so that's slightly different. And there's a question there.
I just want to ask a question before you move on.
Yeah.
Just playing devil's advocate. I can understand in a spa because that's a specialist field. But do you not honestly think that as hotel operators, they're just abdicating their responsibility? they're being lazy and just concentrating on the area that makes the most profit. And if they really wanted to get their arse into gear, they could actually go out and buy the right managers from a restaurant background and actually turn the F&B operation into profitable businesses rather than necessarily going to a company such as yours. And I accept that's controversial, but is there just not a bit of laziness and abdication?
They're sort of doing that anyway. They're not buying the rest. The manager is one component. The fascia on the door, the brand, and the know-how of all the components that tell the manager what to do, that's the bit they're abdicating to. So whether they abdicate up here with the brand and us, or whether they abdicate down there and go and get the restaurant manager themselves, they're probably saving themselves 2 to 3 years of pain and loss of money by bringing in someone at the top with the brand. To give you an example, the Me London case study that I described, it has a mixture of international known brand, STK, secondary brand, Asolino, we have a couple in America, and an unbranded rooftop, which we gave a brand to, we created for them. STK in London was the first STK outside of America. It opened 6 months before the hotel opened. And the reason it opened 6 months before the hotel opened, it was designed to be on the perimeter of the hotel. Yes, you can access it from inside in various different ways. We had 4,000 people pre-booked in an 8-week window that wanted to come to that restaurant. And there came a point, just because the fire alarms weren't working on room 718, there was no point to stop 4,000 people coming and spending the money and having a good time. Now, if they'd abdicated and got a really good restaurant manager, and they had created their own thing, it might memories at the hotel, whatever it's going to be called, it's an international menu, and they'll do what all hoteliers do. They'll have sushi and ceviche and pasta and barbecue, and they have everything for everybody, because that's what everybody wants. You wouldn't have had that. And I think that's an important part. And I think the other side of it as well, and where you're going to find this restaurant manager. Because if that restaurant manager is as good as you want them to be, they're going to stay in restaurant world. Sure, they'll work for a hospitality operator in a hotel, but if they're really, really that good, they ain't going to jump over to hotel world. So you end up potentially with a second or third grade manager, which means you're not necessarily going to fulfill your ambitions.
Should we take questions?
I just wanted to, throw out because I think it's interesting, the joint venture model, but please feel free to ask questions, put your hands up if you want to ask something. Just to talk about the different models. I know you have a menu of different things that an owner can have from you, and you have a joint venture model. What we all know is the management agreement model with a base fee and a sharing in the upside, not in the downside. Sounds like you might be willing to share in the downside, so I think that's interesting. Probably also interesting from the owner's perspective. So I just wanted to see if we can have a bit of a debate around that to finish it off, please.
My question to John is, in the joint venture, how do you do it? Do you take off that property from the balance sheet of the hotel, and you just create another SPV where you have that asset and you both put equity in it, or how does it work?
Each one's, the theory, each one's different. The theory is you have investment, revenue, and profit, and there's share along the way. The proportions of the share are unique to each building, but there's share along the way. And when I say profit, there's also loss, and there's share along the way too. Some have special purpose vehicles, some don't, some it goes into a pot. It's, each one on its own merits, but our position is the JV is, it allows us a stronger voice at the table in the years ahead, obviously. We're not just an outsourced partner. And again, we talked before about that 50-50 split in a market that hasn't got much competition in it. We're doing 50-50 splits in London and New York, where there's huge competition, huge competition. So to bring that to the table for the hotelier is a big deal. So from a JV perspective, it's case by case, but revenue, investment, profit loss, equitably shared as appropriate.
But let's talk about, for example, the London case, just to get an understanding. So how did you do that? And what do you do with the back of the house or the supporting function? For example, housekeeping, security. What do you do with the utilities? So I just just need want to get a better.
We run, I mean, without emailing you the contract, we,
That would be very helpful.
yeah, well, I'm sure it would. If you're developing where I want to go, I'll send you anything. We run a separate P&L. You know, we take the view that the operations should be treated as in standalone operations. So in this particular case study, each outlet has a general manager. Each outlet has a management team. We have effectively an area manager who happens to be in the building. So instead of having a patch that goes like that, his patch goes vertically. He's the F&B director. And each one has a P&L. Sure, there's central charges that get charged out and apportioned, but we treat each one as an independent P&L, you know, even as far as minibar. You know, we do a payroll, we do an inventory, we daily stock take on minibar as anyone would do, but we're running it as a profit and loss center because that's how we run. Traditionally, a hotel would run it as an amenity program. You know, it's a loss cost, it's a loss cost, it's a loss cost. But we're looking to make profit on everything we do. So it's a very different start point.
Any more questions? Yes, please, Dogan.
Hi, this is Darren from Downton, Istanbul. Two questions, one to John, one to Paul. John, you obviously talk about interest alignment being the key to your business with the hoteliers. It's okay and most probably easier when you have your own brand, but when you involve a celebrity chef, do you see any difference on the balance of powers or how to manage it?
We've got very strong views about celebrity chefs, so I hope I don't offend anybody. We don't talk about our chefs. You know, we talk about the experience. We talk about, you know, you expect when you go to a hotel to have a nice, comfortable bed. You expect when you go to a restaurant to have a good meal. The recent proliferation of home cooking, you know, the science behind it, the supermarket wave, you can cook a pretty decent meal at home nowadays. So going to a restaurant isn't necessarily just about the food. You know, that might be controversial. It's about the service, it's about the environment, it's about the design, it's about the other people and like-minded people around you, you know, social alchemy, all those elements come to it. So the celebrity chef for us is, we don't think it's necessarily the future of what we do in the marketplace. You know, the celebrity chef tends to be much more on a management contract. You know, great putting the food on the plate at the table, not necessarily great businessman. You know, not necessarily on top of the economics of it. And we do seriously take the view when we talk about even our own restaurants, not necessarily just our partnerships. You know, we don't really talk about the food. That's third or fourth thing down the list. We talk about the vibe, the energy, the experience, the magic, you know, being there, wanting to be there.
The question to you, Paul.
Yes.
In Istanbul, we're seeing this phenomena of, well, we started with shopping malls, and we're simply wondering if it might be the route down for the hotels as well. In order to populate that particular venue, whether it be a shopping mall or a restaurant or a hotel, in Turkey, people would like to go to places where they can have nice food, and it's mostly on that basis that they do the choices. On the shopping mall world, we see that if you do not have one or two flagship restaurants, your shopping mall starts dying. Do you see the hotels going down that route on the long run? Or, of course, according to business beds and accommodation, but...
Sure. Well, more and more, I mean, we mentioned celebrity chefs, for example. When we opened London, one of our restaurants was contracted to an Italian celebrity chef. And the reason we did that was primarily because of the competitive landscape. You know, London has an incredible choice of restaurants, and many hotels in London actually have restaurants which are really small add-ons to the hotel because it's just so easy to, you know, walk 100 meters and find somewhere good. We believe that with a captive audience of guests in-house, if we can get them to spend as much of their money in-house as possible, then that's great. I really do believe it is, again, a city-by-city case. One looks at Rome, for example. Even the best hotels in Rome don't have the best restaurants in Rome. And in fact, many of the best hotels in Rome offer a good breakfast, very limited stuff at lunch, and a basic offering for dinner. And the reason for that is no matter what they've done, you know, people will always walk 20 meters and go to the nearest bistro, whatever it is. So I really believe that the answer to your question is a local dynamic. I know Istanbul very well. And people in Istanbul still enjoy going to a hotel for a meal. But then again, the offering in Istanbul is getting better and better. So will that carry on? I'm not sure. And I do believe ultimately, because one takes an overall view in terms of profitability, individual owners and operators in any city will take a view on what works best for them. So, if it makes sense to have something really special, then probably they'll do it. But if it doesn't, because no matter what they do, people will still just walk 50 meters away, then I think that's the way it's going to be. Hope that answers your question.
It gives me a follow-up question, which is it also a function of price? If I'm a customer at a hotel and the breakfast is 45 euros, do I want a Starbucks alternative round the corner? Is there a challenge there?
I've seen that many times. I mean, if you stay in a nice hotel in London, you're paying 30 to 40 pounds for breakfast. And, you walk across the road and you can get something, probably an even better breakfast for 10 pounds. It really depends on your guest profile. I think some guests don't really care what the price is and will look for convenience and perhaps will ask for a room service breakfast, which even costs even more. Our client is not necessarily the Starbucks client, so I don't really see that happening too much. But I'm sure that happens, at other levels of hospitality. So, yes, certainly price is a consideration, in the same way as room price is a consideration when people choose where to stay. Many people travel on a limited budget, whether it's on business or on pleasure. So certainly price is always going to be a key factor in choice.
There was more questions.
I have a comment. Roger Allen from Air and Marine Spa and Leisure Development. I agree with what you said, Paul, and there's a general feeling in hospitality that spas don't make money. And it's very right. But the problem is that so many white elephants in the spa, which goes back to what Sue says, that right at the beginning, there's no clarity on exactly what's needed from an added value perspective, size perspective, financial objective of the spa. And if you go to a lot of the original feasibility studies for the property, I'm talking complex spas, 2,000 or 3,000 square meters, the spa makes up maybe 2 or 3 pages of that feasibility study, and it's general comments, 2,000, 3,000 square meter spa, swimming pool and a sauna, and then the revenues in the P&L statement are actually hitting in other departments.
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier about everyone quizzing their figures, and what we had this whole conversation about, and it's becoming more prevalent on the 2,000 to 3,000 square meter spas in particular, and in cities. So let's talk cities, because we have been generally. If we go on to resorts, we'd be here another hour or two, and should probably have been. But if we talk about cities, what I'm finding is that from a CapEx perspective, the pools and the gyms should really be split out. Because if you say you've got a 2,500 square meter spa, half of that is pool and gym, which the hotel either needs or it doesn't, and the hotel needs to decide that. Now, I had a conversation with a client just recently where the figures weren't stacking up, and I said, well, and he thought the spa was too big, which is fair enough. It was about 1,700 square meters. But he was insisting on the pool, and the pool, of course, was 500 square meters with all the surrounds and everything else that went with it. And I said, well, let's bin the pool. It's a city, you don't need a pool. Not, half the hotel stock at 5-star level doesn't have a pool. And he said, oh, no, I need that for the residences. And he had 20 residences. So I said to him, well, in which case, that CapEx needs to go against the residences. So we're coming back to square one, and I think what you say is absolutely right. And it's interesting because I did an investors panel with Susie at the Global Spa and Wellness Summit, and we were trying to analyse, and both the investors who were there was saying that when you're looking at a mixed-use facility or you're looking at larger facilities, the spa doesn't even figure. So nobody looks at it until it's almost too late. So nobody's really doing those figures. And the other thing I would say is, without being arrogant, there are very few people who can do the figures. There are very few people who understand them enough. And I think that's one of the reasons they get buried half the time, because the big hotel consultants don't really know enough about spa figures. So if we have Corinthia London, which is 3,500 square meters, the joy of it is, as I said, we're getting a 35% capture rate at the weekend. So you've got the spa and the pool, which in a way should be capex for the hotel. We've got a local membership, we've got day spa, and we've got hotel guests. So you've got all those different revenue streams. And when you're looking at how you allocate them, there's very few people who...
In fact, if I just may say something, from a hotel perspective, there's also a hidden revenue element which people tend to forget. Because obviously if one is aiming for a particular guest at a particular rate, we talked about price being a consideration. Sometimes people are willing to come to your hotel and pay that specific room rate because there is a spa. Now, is that direct revenue to the spa? No, but it's potentially lost revenue if that spa was not there. So,
Can I expand on that? Can I say
yes.
something that I probably wouldn't have said, but Paul's kind of given me a window to say it? There's a clientele at Corinthia that I know about in London. Now, if we take an outsider in for the day, which we don't do at the weekend anymore because they're too busy, thank God. But at the beginning, we had a £95 a day rate to use the facilities because the facilities were so good, the thermal suite and all the stuff like that, so regardless of treatment. There were clients staying in the hotel for one night to avoid that £95 rate because they got it included in their room rate. So guests, even at the top end of the market, get very clever about all of that stuff.
Yep. And it really is about clever accounting at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I see that all the time in the spa, where the GM will pick and choose which accounting system he uses.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
You know, he kind of wants from Peter to give to Paul.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, Susie.
I just wanted to add that I also think an additional revenue that you don't count is the PR.
Yes.
For a spa, especially like a spa at the Corinthia, which is really phenomenal, and there's been a lot of visibility for it, which I think is also
Was good for the hotel.
Sure.
I think how they were clever, you know, and Paul and Simon would say this, was we had 600 press through the spa in the first 6 months, and those press might not have gone to the hotel. So it kind of helped to put the hotel on the map.
Sure.
Because those journalists were actually physically going into the hotel.
And it all goes back to the statement we made at the very beginning about brand alignment. You know, if it were not the right brand, then, you know, we couldn't live together. But if brand alignment is there, but it's a fact.
It's like a marriage, it is.
But because brand alignment is there, then, you know, it all works as part of, you know, a synergy. In the same way as we have benefited, no doubt they have.
Yes, definitely.
And in
South
fact, we're
Lake.
talking about, you know, other spas in the future, one hopes. But it is very, very much driven by alignment and you know, shared expectations.
I think we're running over time. It's been a really good session. I know there are more questions, but please just come up to the panel and ask the questions individually. You see, I know people probably got flights to catch, but thanks so much for contributing and attending.